figure out how to turn on my camera because I just do not have it on. I am not altogether here. I am altogether here now. Hey, you guys, it has been more than a hot minute. It's been a while since I've been online and done a video. And I have a confession to make. I had already decided to go ahead and firebomb my content and take it down of Costa Rica than I ever have before, right before we took our trip back to the US for a month. We went on a crazy cross-country trip here. So I'd already decided that I was going to stop talking about religion and stop talking about toxic religion, even though I wrote about this for 10 years with Pathos. Speaking of which, let me introduce myself. Let me reintroduce myself since nobody seems to know me anymore. My name is Suzanne Titkemeyer. I live in Central America now. I lived in the US near Washington, D.C. for many years. I wrote for a place called Pathos for 10 years, a column called No Longer Quivering that had to do with the quiverful religious movement. Hey, Little E. Yeah, I'm here. Hey, Kentucky girl. Hey. So I wrote for this place, and then later I transitioned to YouTube after I stopped writing for the place. One of the reasons that I stopped writing was the Andersons, not the only reason, because people at Bethel Reading were just as equally bad and evil as far as I could see, and were also reaching out to touch somebody. So there's been a lot of crap happening in the world of the Andersons, and I've been mostly just tapped out, sitting back, drinking my pretend booze. And like John Lennon once famously said, watching the wheels go round and round. I haven't been paying much attention to too much else. I've been busy. And add in a little 5-week bout of shingles, and it's taken me a while. Little E, they have been horrifying. My heart goes out to John. I have no words of wisdom for that poor young man. But I did finally get a hold of Dead Domain and said, "Hey, you need to point him towards Mike Hickman because Mike actually is really good at getting the word out about that type of child abuse." And he's been starting an organization to shine the light on that crap. And you're right, John Anderson's interviews have been extremely horrifying. I think the most surprising thing to me was hearing that Stephen disciplined her by beating her with an electrical cord. Um, that to me was really shocking. Now I have known the groups where the wife gets punished. Not well and not intimately, but I've seen a bunch of that go on. And I never dreamed that was part of the NIFB. I just never dreamed that that was part of their equation. Now, did I think that Stephen beat those kids? Heck yes. I thought he beat them silly from what I could tell. I thought it was interesting how John talked about Dead Domain Jordan saying people can disagree with them, but that they were the only people willing to help him. The pastors all refused. Yeah, because it's a hard thing to help these people, to help them coming out. The reason that guys like Dead Domain understand is look at Dead. He has had you could just look at him and tell that he has been through hell and back with the things he's been involved with in his life that are genuinely not his not awful. They're just part of who he is. You get very religious people and they start just really pouring it on and saying, "Oh, they're going to hell, blah, blah, blah." So this afternoon, yeah, and I feel horrible for John listening to those interviews because no child should ever have to put up with that kind of abuse. And he can't get CPS to investigate, which is very frustrating. That's why I wanted him to reach out to M. Dolan Hickman, Mike Hickman on YouTube, not on YouTube, on Facebook, because Mike is pretty good about getting CPS to pay attention to these reports. Mike understands how to sue to get them to do these things, what buttons to push. He has it all under control. So I'm sure that Mike would do well at that, at helping John. And John does need help. His family have thrown him out, and I'm sure they're telling him they've cast him into the outer darkness and he's going to hell. Because that's what those type of people always say. That's what they used to say to me in my old church, right up until I moved here. Once they saw where I was living and how I was living, suddenly it was like, "Oh, buddy, old pal, are you gonna put me up in your guest house for a couple of weeks while I come to Costa Rica?" And I've had to say, "Absolutely not." Except that I've had to find interesting ways to put them off, and some of it is what I know about them. Some of it is stuff like Susanna Anderson believes. So many of them believe that vaccines aren't a thing, that you shouldn't do them. So I scared off that bunch by saying, Costa Rica is gonna require you to have that COVID vaccination before you come and or put up $1,000 insurance bond before you come. They were doing that for a while, and I admit I use that to my advantage. Yeah, you gotta find where their button is to push to make them go away when they start that. Because I've reached a point where I don't hold anything against any of them. I've forgiven them, but that does not mean that I want to let them back into my lives again. When someone harms you with that kind of damage, you don't let them back in. And that's where my heart breaks for John. John's parents and some of his siblings are like this, okay? And they've cast him out into the quote or outer darkness, and he's alone. Very few people would. Now, I've never tried to reach out to any of the Anderson kids. I felt nothing but sorry for all of them until some of them became adults and carried on the ridiculousness. This afternoon, Isaac left a comment on my last video I did, explaining yet again about the thing that happened with the teenage girls and the young adult men and some of the things that were said and done, some of the things that happened afterwards. Now, with that situation, my main concern was getting those young women justice, getting them help. And so many of the parents, I was really shocked, did not know that what had happened and what was being said to their daughters was actually a crime. They had no idea that this was not something normal, or not normal, I should say, because some of them thought that the young men doing this stuff were perverse and perverted, which they may well have been. It sure read like they weren't exactly the most normal. So anyway, I stumbled across this afternoon that reminded me of John and everything he's going through that I'm hearing on Dead Domains interviews. Blessed are the trauma-laden ones, those unable to breathe in church because of the weight of the pain the church has inflicted. For God will meet them in other places on their pilgrimage to peace. I think about that with young people like John. What happened to him shouldn't happen to any kid. I cannot imagine what it was like to see your mother beaten, even if your mother was a bit controlling herself. Well, I shouldn't say a bit. Susanna Anderson comes with her own problems. And so I just wish him grace and peace. I hope he finds people to help him. John, reach out and talk to me if you want. Anything you say to me will be confidential. So anyway, back to Isaac. Isaac reaches out and touches me today when he leaves a comment. And I had to laugh because he was talking about Todd Ferguson. And for you guys who don't know who Todd Ferguson is, he used to have a YouTube channel called The Reason Files. There was Reason Files 1 and Reason Files 2. One of them was run by Robert Tuttle, the other one was run by a nice young man named Todd Ferguson, and he was in one of the towns in Ohio on the Great Lakes. He disappeared one night going out to buy a pair of shoes from a vendor out in his yard, out in the street, told his family he'd be right back. This was January 20th, 2021. He disappeared. His family could not find him at all. Yes, indeedy. I pulled out all of my notebooks from the last couple of years to read through Anderson nonsense. So Todd disappeared. Nobody knew where he was. His family was frantic. They filed a missing persons report. People started talking on Facebook, wondering where he was. They put together a group. Robert Tuttle, I think, was the administrator. Well, unfortunately, Todd turned up dead days later with his head bashed in on the very top. And being Ohio and the coroner system that's in place in that area, the coroner ruled that it was natural causes. I don't know what passes for justice there. This is why the Office of Medical Examiner completely divorced from all investigation needs to be a sacred thing everywhere because that's the only way you get to truth in some of these things. So poor Todd has been not respected in death. I don't know if he was respected in life or not. I talked to him more than a few times. Well, a few times at least, trying to remember. I'm in Ohio, and some of the police, yeah, there are. There is a lot of corruption in some small towns and some even bigger towns there. And I tried to talk to the police when this all went down. Why? One reason only. A day or so after Todd went missing, the members of the new independent fundamentalist Baptist, Stephen Anderson's bunch, started posting videos of Kool and the Gang celebrate and making references to the fact that Todd Ferguson was dead, and they said in hell, even though sometimes I think that we'll celebrate, and making references to the fact that Todd Ferguson was dead, and they said in hell, even though sometimes I think that what we do to each other and this place here, not so much Costa Rica, but reality is hell. I think that many times. And that to me was just unacceptable because here we had these people that were saying, "Oh, we know Todd's dead," days and days before the body was found. And then you got the incompetent coroner calling it natural causes. And I know April Sharpton and myself, we both talked to the police department about this when it went down. Because I believe in my heart of hearts they bumped him off. Now, I don't know what has happened with Robert Tuttle. I had to go back and look at the recent files today to figure out because I hadn't heard from Robert in a while. I would talk to him once in a great while. And Robert's the reason files is still there in a truncated form. I'm not really sure what has gone down, but I know that YouTube has had some big changes and he may have been caught in that. Who knows? But he hasn't posted or uploaded for 3 years. So can't even figure out what happened to him. I've gone through as much just very quick search as I could find, no answers. But here's what I did see, and this is the thing that scares me that I want to talk about a little bit besides Isaac's approval of the death of Todd Ferguson. Let me read you Isaac's little comment he put on my YouTube channel. Todd Ferguson shouldn't have been talking trash. So there you have it. You have Isaac Anderson approval of the death of Todd Ferguson. Yeah, I saw his interview too, but I had more of a problem with Isaac than with John. Isaac said so many just incredibly hateful things. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt because I know he's young. These are not older men. They're not mature. So it's not too understandable. It's understandable why he might be following his parents' party line. And it's just an awful thing, some of the things that he was saying then. He acted like he was racist, he was, a member I swear, almost a card-carrying Nazi type from what he was saying. And yeah, no, I am not going to be putting ads on this. If it's already on there, and I'm sure it is, I'm gonna take it off because I want to be able to say what I wanna say tonight. I want to be able to call a Nazi if a Nazi's acting like a Nazi. How many Nazis can you Nazi? I did not see that coming. So that interview was awful. What he's posted tonight was awful. I was willing to be at least halfway polite to him. So my answer to the him was a lot nicer than normally I would. Usually I don't suffer fools very easily or well. Once I hit my 60s, it was like all bets are off. I am not worried about being liked in my lifetime. I'm not worried about that at all. I'm just going to be who I am. So you got Isaac saying those horrible things. And then I looked at Robert Tuttle's thing and realized it hadn't been updated in 3 years. And then I saw that somebody had copied the Reason Files, had taken the name the Reason Files, and had used the old Reason Files logo, which is they're no longer using. And it's all uploaded videos about shoes, which is what Todd Ferguson was out supposedly buying from a street vendor, obviously from an Anderson setup, I would say. And it never dawned on me until that moment that the person that lured him out was an Anderson supporter of some sort. But clearly that's what's going on because why would they have all these videos about shoes mentioning Robert Tuttle, mentioning Todd Ferguson? So the other part of me wonders if perhaps they have gone ahead and bumped off Robert now. I'm gonna have to do some digging, some research, and see what I can dig up as far as this goes. I didn't know Robert very well. I didn't talk to him as often as I had talked to Todd. The thing that I knew about Robert and Todd to an extent is that they had very fundamentalist beliefs that I did not hold about religion. I tell everybody I do believe in God. I even believe in Jesus, but what I believe in is more the words of Jesus and what he did, and to kind of leave the rest of it behind because there's not a whole lot of the Bible that makes a lot of sense. Some of it is beautiful and poetic. I don't think it is the literal word of God. Now, it could be God inspired, it could be all of those things, but to say it is the word of God coming from the mouth of God, particularly the King James, which historians say is the worst translation of all of them. So I have questions about all of that. So my faith doesn't really rely on believing every single word of the Bible is the literal word out of God's mouth. I just don't buy it. I believe in science and reason. I believe in the things that Jesus said were important. None of this other stuff. And to see a whole group of people using their faith, and I call it faith loosely with what they're doing or not in the new IFB because it looks like a hate cult from here. It does. And the Southern Poverty Law Center has identified them as a hate group. I think that's right on the money. I would not be surprised if they weren't also on the Justice Department's watch list for hate groups. Jesus was pretty clear about what he thought was important and redemptive. Exactly. And some of the things I see Christians worrying themselves over just makes me laugh because Jesus never mentioned anything like that. And those things were around back then. There were homosexuals back in Jesus's day. You know how we know that? because some of the Roman brothels that have been unearthed in some of the Roman cities had like a pictogram of different sexual services you could pay for, including homosexual acts. So it did exist. Jesus never once addressed it as far as I can tell. The same thing with abortion and a bunch of other things. There have always been herbs that women have taken. There's always been that. In fact, there's a part in the Bible that talks about abortion. Does that women have taken? There's always been that. In fact, there's a part in the Bible that talks about abortion. Does that mean I like abortion? No, I don't like it at all. I personally would not have one. Do you know what I hate worse than abortion? Telling somebody else what to do with their life and their body. So that's where I am. You go ahead and you make peace with what you do with God, and I don't think we need to legislate that. So that's where I stand on all of that. So I'm standing diametrically opposed in some ways to Todd and Robert, even though I respect both of them and they've both been reasonable. So now the new IFB has taken over one of the recent files accounts. They are posting stuff mocking the death of Todd Ferguson, mocking Robert Tuttle, mocking how Todd was lured outside, and just mocking the entire thing. They think they've gotten away with something big. All I can say is they better hope and pray that this political turmoil we're undergoing in the country right now doesn't go out the way I think it'll play. Because if it plays out that way, they may find themselves under investigation. I can't see the Harris administration allowing pastor to suborn criminal acts from the members, like it's the mafia or some type of criminal organization. I just can't see that. That's not a church, that's a cult. That is a cult of the worst kind when you can be persuaded to go against what you know in your heart and your mind is the right thing. So that's my little ranting tonight. And it's kind of funny because I was getting ready to give up my account for everything with Costa Rica. I have probably 20 or 30 videos on my GoPro right now. Places I've been recently that were just out of this world, one of which was a beach called Carrillo, which is just south of Samara. That was just fabulous. I fell in love with it. So the widest beach I've seen outside of Playa Grande. And unlike Grande, it is very accessible and just beautiful. So I had that going on, and I was thinking, I'm done with religion. I'm done with all of this. But I guess I'm not. I guess I'm not. And I'm going to have to do some thinking about what it is I actually want to accomplish with the channel, what my content should be, all of that. Because in the last couple of years, I've really tried my damnedest not to let anybody trauma dump on me, to keep my talking to people who have been through trauma to a minimum, mostly because of I don't have energy after I had my thalamic stroke. I have a little bit of energy each day or very few spoons. When the spoons get used up, it's too much. Example, I had a conversation the other day with somebody about a week or so ago, close friend. We had a 5-hour conversation on the phone where he was just spinning and spinning and spinning, and I could tell he wasn't, I don't wanna say mentally ill, but let's say he wasn't rational. He just was not rational, and I knew he was working something out by talking to me, and it had nothing to do with me and anything I could even say. But to sit there and hear that from somebody that I loved was really hard, and I just didn't have the energy. I'm sitting back at my desk like this going, "Oh my god, please get me off the phone." At one point, I had grabbed one of my notebooks, and then later a paper plate and wrote on there, "Help, help, help," and whipped it over my husband taking a nap and hit him in the head so he could get me off the phone because I could not cut this guy off. Every time I tried to cut him off and get off, he would throw something else out. And it was kind of funny because one of the things that we talked about, knocked heads about, and we rarely knock heads. He told me that mastocytosis and mast cell disorders are all um, psychosomatic. Now, I know there are a lot of you that watch me that have all kinds of different illnesses, and many of you have heard this about your own illness. So many times this has been said to so many people. Oh, it's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. Not quite. Yeah, so he was telling me that, and we were arguing about that literally. It was pretty intense argument for about 10 minutes until I realized, A, he figured he came up with this um, from doing a little bit of reading on the internet. Okay, a little bit of reading on the internet. I tried to explain to him the role of IgE cells and their role in this and how they are triggered sometimes by allergens and a whole number of things. And he just was like not listening to it at all. It's counter helpful. He's not an immunologist. He's never treated anybody with mast cell. He's not a doctor. So finally I was just had to ask myself, is it worth the battle fighting for this? And I had to say no. So that's where I had to start going. I'd say, come rescue me, honey, because I couldn't cut him off. And yeah, Kentucky girl, I could just go on and on and on and on and on about that one. I actually told my husband after I had my thalamic stroke, it's like, I'm actually almost glad that I have to walk with a cane now because before everybody would say, "Oh, you don't look sick at all." I said, I can show you where my teeth have started to pop out from the mast cell. I can show you how dark my teeth are. They don't bleach up. I can't go to the dentist and get them all bleached. So many things it's done for me, and they're telling me, "Oh, you look fabulous, darling." It's like, "No, I don't. I look hideous. I feel hideous. I feel a lot more hideous than I look." And, yeah, so I don't have spoons for any of that anymore. That was why I cut off talking to people like John and Isaac about their trauma, because I don't have the spoons for that anymore. But I gotta say, I am open to talking to John finally. John, if you're out there, hit me up. I might be able to help you with some of this, and unfortunately, I wouldn't want anybody to have to go through what you're going through. Isaac, I pray you get the help you need because clearly you need lots of help to see what's wrong. You were raised in the midst of that trauma. Hey, hey, the meat-based kitchen. I might have to hit you up because I may have to be doing the meat-based thing. I'm trying to diet and it's not going well. Um, so Anderson galore. So that's all, But to summarize, Robert Tuttle has no one's heard from him in 3 years. Todd Ferguson is dead and buried. The creeps at the new IFB have put together a channel like Robert's, like Todd's, where they're making fun of shoe sales, which is how they lured Todd out of his house, was by promising to sell him shoes cheaply. And they're still rejoicing over his death. How twisted and sick is that? Um, Isaac reached out today. He approves of Todd Ferguson's death. He approves of another human being's death. And I don't care who you are, even if you're political people, I don't much care for. Even if you're Ted Cruz, I'm not wanting you to die. I'm not going to glory in the fact that you turned around and healed over. It is quite bizarre, Lily. I don't get it at all. Okay. I'm just going to throw out, I don't get it. I don't get that mindset. And I'll never understand it. I also don't understand people who completely cut their children off. Even though, I have family members I struggle with, I don't always talk to on the regular because of The struggles, I don't treat them like they're dead, let's just put it that way. Sometimes I will sit back and think, and I won't talk for a while because I need to sit with my feelings and figure out how I feel about something and how I'm gonna react to something that somebody has said to me. So what the whole family has done to John is awful. I'm gonna put a link in the description that goes to Dead Domains channel. He has been instrumental in giving these guys a forum to have their say and tell what has happened to them, both Isaac and John. And, I've told Dead Domain before, and I will say this again. Maybe it's because I'm a woman. Maybe it's because I've always been super passionate. I don't know how he manages to be so kind and non-confrontational. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm not good at that, but I'm blessed by it when I see it in him, and I see how he treats the survivors of these different CULTs. But like I said, the future of my channel is unclear. I have started to develop some short-term memory losses, and I think it's because of the drugs I'm on for the mast cell. The objectivity and the way he Jordan was able to yeah, he is amazing. Jordan is amazing as far as I'm concerned. He has that well of deep decency within him. He just does. He's a good guy. Good guy, good woman. However, Jordan is identifying. I haven't kept up with Jordan. I don't know what the pronouns are. So I'm just going to say Jordan from now on and just go from there. I'm an old fart. I don't always get the pronouns thing. I try to do it. I have two transgendered relatives. I try not to dead gender them. But once you start having short-term memory problems like I've been having, sometimes you slip and you say those things, even though you don't mean it. You really mean the brightest blessings to that person. So, Jordan, you're awesome. I'm going to link to your channel. I think it's they, them. I've just gathered that from Reddit. See, I don't go to Reddit as much. There's a couple of Reddits I hang around in. One of the ones I hang around in is all the travel ones because of how crazy travel is. Like, most people don't know that here in Costa Rica, the embassy says don't use Airbnb because so many people have been robbed at Airbnbs. There's been robbery and violence, so they don't recommend it. And I still have seen people going, "Hey, what's the best Airbnb in Costa Rica?" And it's like, I don't know. My neighbors across the street all have Airbnbs, and I see a lot of angry Americans sometimes, and they're not even robbing them. They're just not providing a very nice space. Oh, Amy Elizabeth, I'm glad to hear that. I think what I'm doing is I've just taken this little time. I've had 5 weeks of shingles. Can you believe that? I still have a few in the front, but man, you should see my back is torn up right now with them. It's crazy. A handful of us escaped the NIFB meat-based kitchen. I'm so glad to hear that because when all of that went down with those girls and the young men, it took every bit of social work training I had to be able to talk to people and suggest that they need to go to they need to get out, or they need to do this, or they need to go talk to the police because that was such a serious situation, and so many of the parents didn't understand that what had happened was a crime. I've had shingles too, it sucks. Oh, Amy, I had hoped I wouldn't have any more. 12 years ago was my last bout of them. 10 years ago, I got vaccinated against shingles, and they only gave me one of the vaccines. I had an anaphylactic reaction in the hospital, so I was told, "Don't take the second one," and then when they came out with a new one, I was told not to get that one, that I should avoid it. So I was thinking, "Maybe I got enough where I'm not gonna have shingles anymore." I'm sad to say That's not true. So I'm gonna have to revisit with my doctor whether or not I need to be revaccinated, because this is just no fun at all. And every time I think that it's over, guess what? Another ring around my body starts. Right now, it's all where my bra strap goes. So I'm having to limit myself to those things I can get away with wearing braless without freaking out the entire community. And I want to thank you guys because you've given me encouragement tonight. I had genuinely thought I was done with YouTube and I was done ever talking about religion. I think this is the hangover from the latest editing of my book. Um, and I see now it's still needed. It's still needed, sadly enough. My rheumatologist told me no shingles, live or new vaccine. Oh, 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 and I'm still trying to get vaccinated for RSV. When I was in the States, the couple places that I tried at in my doctor's office there were actually out of the vaccine. I fell in this whole weird hole where I was like traveling and was not able to get vaccinated like I normally do when I go back to the States. I usually get all my vaccinations rather than here, because here it's a little bit different. Most of the vaccinations come through the health department. I'm not on the CAHA system, which is where you have to be to get vaccinated. I'm on private insurance and private clinics. I got the RSV and still no RS. And you still got RSV, Kentucky. Ah, so who was talking? It was Pearlie this morning was talking about a kid at a couple kids at one of her children's schools had whooping cough, and I was like, "Oh no," because I had whooping cough 2 times one winter as an adult after I was diagnosed with mastocytosis. My lungs are just trashed. They just don't work right, and, so I was gonna get the RSV and I just didn't. So I'm hoping that I can walk into Walmart here and ask for it and get it, because 'cause I've done that for the flu shots and some of the other things. So I'm hoping eventually they release those here for private purchase as well. It's just crazy, isn't it, Kentucky? So the whooping cough was the biggest pain in the rear. It was actually worse than the shingles this time. And I think the reason the shingles wasn't as bad as it normally is because I've got all these lovely lyric I'm on every day, and it takes some of the nerve pain of the normal shingles away. So that's where I am, just a rambling hot mess, still worried about religion. So I just want to say this to Isaac and all of the ones that are still new IFB. I ain't going nowhere. You guys threatening to show up here and shave my head. And I got hundreds of those threats at one point. Do you know what that has done to me? Nothing, nothing, nothing. You are not going to shut me down. I'm going to do and say what I will. And good luck getting here to shave my head. That's all I can say, because you'll have to spend a ton of money. There aren't real addresses here, and I don't think you're going to be able to get over the wall without triggering the burglar alarm. And do you really want to run into Jose and his sidearm? You want to run into me and my machete and other implements of destruction? Even though I gotta say, as hot as it's been here lately, cutting off my hair starts to feel like a good choice, like shaving my head is the way to go. But you guys are not running me off. Everyone at IFB, well, IFB that's giving me hassles, sit and spin, babies. The rest of you guys, I love you. These people are not, they're not what I would even call Christians. It's a cult of personality going on there. It really is, and there's a lot of brainwashing and well, I hate to see it say brainwashing because it's such an overused term, but there's a lot of pressure to conform. And that stuff is just evil and very difficult to get away with. I've heard that about McMurtry, that he had asked Anderson, he called for him to step down and removed. It needs to happen. It needs to happen, and that's another thing I thought about is these groups, like my old church that I call Possum Creek in my book, they don't exist anymore because splits, sell off the church to a molar plant of a Baptist church. These things, they have their season and then they fall apart. And I've been waiting for Anderson to have his comeuppance and for this all to fall apart. And so far, he seems to have avoided it, just like he somehow manages to avoid stepping on rusty nails when he's out running barefoot in the desert. Okay, you guys, I'm really going to go this time because I am a rambling hot mess and I need to go. I need to go fold sheets. The house is clean, but I got to fold sheets. Yeah. Love you guys. Thanks for allowing me to have the time off that I needed to put myself back together.